Hello, my name is Michael Garrick, and this is PoppinCulture Movie Reviews. My guest today is a comedian, trainer, and veteran, Robert Taylor. Thank you so much for coming on to the movie review.
Glad to be here.
The movie that we're going to be reviewing is Hollywood Shuffle. You chose the movie. Is there any special reason why you chose it, or?
Yeah, because it was one of the first movies I saw that actually got me curious about comedy, the workings of comedy, and also too, it was probably the first socially irreverent movie I saw, of my generation or whatever. And I thought maybe you hadn't seen it, because it was over 35 years old, pretty much.
No, this was 2 days ago was my first time ever watching it, and honestly, the first time when I was first watching it, I was like, okay, Robert told me to watch this movie. That was my first thought. I was like, okay, but I truly enjoyed it. Like, I truly enjoyed the movie. This will be a spoiler review. Before we spoil the movie, would you tell them to watch it?
Yeah, man. I could. You see a lot of these stand-up comedians, even not just stand-ups, but maybe improv comedians. The big names of the day: Dave Chappelle, Martin Lawrence, these guys like that. Everything they did, like the Dave Chappelle show, is known to be a groundbreaker. But I got news for you. You can ask Dave Chappelle where his influences were, and he'll go back and say, In Living Color, and people say, oh man, In Living Color was the groundbreaker, but they don't understand. In Living Color wasn't a groundbreaker. It was almost an offshoot of Hollywood Shuffle.
Yes, very much.
Because if you watch Hollywood Shuffle, you're going to be sitting there saying, holy cow. Not only is it some of the same cast with the Wayans, but it's the same format. It's the same, not exactly, because I think In Living Color was a little more risque and a little more on the edge. But you can see where it all came from. And just as a side note, if you like stand-up comedy, and of that generation, Eddie Murphy, the same guy that directed this movie, directed Eddie Murphy Raw.
Yes. That blew my mind to learn that too. A lot about this movie blew my mind. But just like him, I would agree. You should definitely watch the movie. It's great. Like it's definitely. It's not the greatest movie of all time, but it's definitely something that you should see. From this point on, we'll be spoiling the movie. Robert Townsend directs this movie. Robert Townsend directed The Temptations, I believe. He directed a few TV shows I've seen.
Yeah.
And he directed a Disney Channel movie called Up and Away, but we won't talk about it.
Yeah.
Long story short, I know who Robert Townsend is. I like him as an actor. I like him as a director. But seeing him just be so blunt in this movie, it has a message, and it's just here. I wouldn't say shoving it right into your face, but it's definitely I want you to know my point of view.
And that's why I say it's groundbreaking, because up until that point, there was nothing like that. The closest thing was probably Saturday Night Live, but I got news for you. It didn't address race the same way that he did. When they had Eddie Murphy and stuff like that on there, Eddie Murphy would address race. The other guys wouldn't. This movie addresses the whole concept of how African Americans and minorities in general were treated in Hollywood up until that point. Basically stereotyped in certain roles and stuff like that. And like I said, if you go back and watch it now, you'll understand that a lot of these guys now who are multi-millionaires and these famous superstars, African Americans, they owe it
to Robert
Townsend because he broke the glass ceiling.
Yeah, he gave so many actors now that you see now. He just gave so many talented actors opportunities. And the sketches, I never felt like a sketch went too long, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I felt all of them were the right amount of time. Each one carried a strong impact. Each one was funny. Like I said, each one carried a message. Did you have a favorite sketch or favorite sketches?
My favorite one was where I can't remember the name of the movie that he was doing, where he played Jimmy, and Jimmy's the guy that his partner that got killed.
Yes, sir.
And he goes out and does the name of his gang is the Afros, and he's doing this long drug out. Afros. They killed Jimmy, but it's like the most blatant racist stereotype you could ever do of an African American, and it's right in your face, man. And you can't. I mean, I wasn't uncomfortable because I'll be honest with you, man. The whole time I was in the Marine Corps, I never had a white roommate. I had all African American or Mexican roommates.
Okay.
So I got to hang out with them in their own culture, away from stuff like that. So I felt comfortable, and I knew how white people were looked at in general, by most people, and so it didn't shock me as much. But that was one of my favorite ones, and actually. The opening of the movie where he's rehearsing that scene with his little brother in the bathroom, and his grandmother walks in on him because she didn't want him doing that kind of film, the stereotype film.
Yeah, she's famous for
She's been
7.
She even before that.
Okay.
I think she was on Sanford and Son for. She played a recurring role on Sanford and Son.
Yes, sir. You're right.
She didn't play Aunt Esther, but she looked like her a little bit. But she played another role on there. And a couple of those older guys were in shows. But yeah, I'd say that was probably my favorite scene because, as he said, going back to what you had said earlier.
Helen Martin is her name. I'm sorry.
Oh, the grandma?
Just bringing up the cast list. That's all.
Yeah. Talking about stories being based on movies being based on true stories or whatever like that. This story it's not his life story, but it's loosely based on his life of trying to be an actor in Hollywood and how he couldn't get roles. And people actually said he would actually get turned down for roles because they said he wasn't black enough to get the roles, which is ironic, right? And so he does that scene where he gets the role, and it's like if you had a scale of being stereotypical Hollywood black from 0 to 100, he was like 200 on the scale of doing it. So it was like, I think, that was my favorite scene.
One to go with what you said about the type of black, that the skit about Eddie Murphy type. That really was eye-opening. Of course, if they were to redo that sketch now, they would go with somebody else. But just to see, I can remember seeing not as good movies, but seeing other movies where I was like, wow, this really is like Beverly Hills Cops. I can't think of the movies because they weren't good movies, but I could see, studios doing that. Just being
it's called The Formula.
Yes.
They would do that with everything, with Rambo movies, with Rocky, with whatever the thing was in pop culture, the popular female or male actor. Comedian, it was Eddie Murphy, right? So everybody had to do Eddie Murphy movies.
You're 100% right, because I think
it's a formula.
Yeah, and we're gonna bounce back to the movie, but I think you're 100% right about the formula, because I remember reading that Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
They had so many cheesy spinoffs,
but they would bump heads when it came to the box office, to the point that
Bruce Willis. He was one too. He started doing the Die Hard movies, and then some of those other ones. They had
they just couldn't release their movies the same week. They would have to be at least a month apart because their movies.
They'd cannibalize each other because they had the same audience.
Yes. Yeah. So, but then they finally start working again on the Expendables. But yeah.
But that skit you're talking about, where he was when they told him in the audition, we're looking for the Eddie Murphy type. He had the mannerisms down, Eddie Murphy mannerisms down.
On point.
Yeah.
On point. Another sketch that really stuck out to me was, and the only thing I was thinking was Idris Elba.
Oh, yeah.
Was that sketch about the acting school for black actors.
Yeah, where they were doing the slaves escaping the plantation.
And then he cuts to the British accent.
British accent.
And I was like, oh, that's Idris Elba.
Yeah.
That's it right there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
We'll teach you how to, and I was like, wow, okay.
How to jive talk and what I forgot what the walk was.
Yeah.
But they had white instructors teaching the black actors.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was another. If you took every scene or skit in that movie and stopped and isolated each scene,
Yes, sir.
like that one, for instance, everyone has a theme that a point that he was trying to make, and that was more than one of them. One was that these are the only roles we can get as slaves, da da da. But now they got white people teaching us how to be black people.
Yes.
And it was the things like that they weren't overt. You had to be paying attention to it. And a lot of people, it wasn't a big commercially successful movie.
No, not at all.
But it wasn't because it wasn't a good movie. It was because it went almost straight to videotape, VHS.
Really?
I think it cost like around $1 million to make, and they made like $5 million. It was successful,
Okay.
and the critics liked it. He got really good reviews from the critics, but it didn't make it wasn't some box office, and it was probably because I think it came out like '87 when those Rambo and all that. I think that was when like Dirty Dancing and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So it probably came out when a lot of those big blockbusters came out. Mm-hmm. But so when most people that probably saw it, they had no idea that there was actually an underlying theme, or he had an objective making that movie.
Yeah.
It was like Oliver Stone making Platoon. He was trying to tell a story about the Vietnam War. He wasn't trying to make a combat movie. He was trying to make a story about the Vietnam War. And that was the same thing Robert Townsend was trying to make about that, was how blacks weren't treated right and equally in Hollywood, and the whole system, or the Hollywood system and stuff like that. But you could ask most people now that probably saw it, and they wouldn't even, they probably still couldn't tell you that. They just saw it as a funny, it's like In Living Color. If you watch In Living Color, there's a lot of that underlying tones in In Living Color.
A lot of messages. Yes,
yeah.
Sir. I can't say for you, but as I'm a little bit younger than you, so I got to see a lot of people younger in this movie.
Yeah.
It blew my mind to see a younger Paul Mooney.
Oh, I thought you were going to see a skinny Damon Wayans. He was like this big around, man.
That too.
But Paul Mooney, yeah.
To see a younger Paul Mooney.
And even at that time, Paul Mooney was a big deal.
Oh, yeah,
because he was one of the originals at the Comedy Store with Richard Pryor.
He helped write.
He was like that with Richard Pryor. He helped write for Richard Pryor and the Richard Pryor Show. And but that was how he was able to make that movie, because we talked about before, Robert Townsend used his credit cards to finance. I think he got $100,000 from the studio, and he used his credit cards to make that movie. So what he had to do was get a lot of his friends in comedy to do cameos for free, or maybe something on the back end. I don't know, like that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to make that movie. I mean, Eddie Murphy wasn't in the movie.
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
I noticed. That it was one of those things where, like,
but you know
I
why
expected it
he wasn't
coming.
in there too, though.
No,
he was established with the studios, and that movie could have gone either way. That's what they were. Robert Townsend did interviews later, and Keenan Ivory Wayans talked about. That's why they couldn't get the movie made by the studios, because it was so on the edge, and it could have gone either way, where people could have said, "Oh, no." And for you to be a bankable star like Eddie Murphy, to do that, it could have killed your career. That movie could have killed your career if it had, because you got to look at what the whole movie's about. The whole movie's bashing the studio system.
Okay, true.
So he may have helped. He may have helped unknowingly or unacknowledged. But that's why you don't see any major bankable stars in that movie, especially African American stars, because they could lose their jobs.
True. Because John Witherspoon definitely wasn't the same. I mean, John Witherspoon definitely had a big standing in the comedy community at the time.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a movie star at all at that point. Mm-hmm. So to see him, like, gradually get his acting into movies, because I can't say any of the acting in the movie is amazing. It's a sketch movie, so it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
But it was never. But that wasn't the point of it. Was like great performance. It was just about being funny, and I think they nailed that greatly. How do you feel about the editing in the movie?
Man, when you watch it, you almost think somebody was. Actually, you could probably done a better job filming or whatever with your cell phone these days, because they're so advanced or whatever like that. But I never looked it up. I'd be interested to see how long it took them to shoot that movie. Because they were on limited time, because they could only get access to locations, like when they weren't being used. It's not like Big Hollywood shuts down something for. They couldn't do that because he didn't have the money.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like they didn't want this movie.
I mean, like when they had the limousine and stuff like that, they were probably used. They probably borrowed somebody's limousine.
Yeah.
Or somebody might have actually worked for a limousine service that drove the car home and they used it one day or something like that.
They might have just went to a funeral home and be
They
like,
could
"Look,
have,
can we
yeah.
use this?"
Yeah. But as far as the editing though, I mean, I bet they didn't edit that much out of there.
No.
I would like to see the outtake stuff.
Yeah, that would be like a. I feel like
that'd be a whole nother movie, right?
That's
there.
what I was about to say. That.
Yeah.
It was just like I said. I can only go off my experience. This is his first movie, Robert Townsend.
Yeah.
As it was his first movie, do you feel like that was what helped him get to the next level, or do you think this movie was the reason why it took him maybe a little bit longer to get to the next level?
No, I think it gave him credibility to show that he could do it because he did other stuff after that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But also too, even though he wasn't directly involved or whatever like that, that credibility that he had, it was not just him because Keenan Ivory Wayans helped produce the movie too.
Yes.
Right? No, that's not true. Keenan Ivory Wayans helped write the movie. Robert Townsend produced and directed the movie by himself.
Okay.
But the credibility that they both had from that movie, from the job they did, I guarantee you that played a huge part in being able to get In Living Color. That and the fact that Fox was a new network and they were looking for something edgy.
Exactly.
That Sunday night lineup.
Was Keenan on SNL at that time, or he had already got fired?
He wasn't on there long at all. If he was on there, I don't remember Keenan Ivory Wayans ever being. He might have been a writer.
Or maybe it was right. I just remember him talking about it. He was on for like maybe 3 episodes, and he just knew.
Well, maybe he probably wasn't one of the. He was probably like a not one of the primetime players or whatever like that.
He said he knew he was gonna get fired. Like he just felt.
There's been a few people like that. They were on there for like 1 or 2 episodes, and they turned out to be really better at whatever they did. I don't. But that's Saturday Night Live hasn't always worked out for people either. Like in the long run.
Yeah. Yes. We won't go down that tunnel. Yeah, it's definitely been a few. You be like, man.
You know what too though, you'll often hear people. They'll often try to compare. They'll say, "Oh yeah, it was." Talking about In Living Color. I know we're talking about Hollywood Shuffle, but for me they're interrelated. But you'll hear people talking about, "Oh yeah, In Living Color, man. That was like Saturday Night Live." They were like that. But they weren't, because Saturday Night Live was mainstream and it was geared towards mainstream. And there was, believe it or not, when that first came on, man, like especially like the second or third year I was in college, that was a big deal. We'd stay up on Saturday night. You had cable, you could watch it on with rabbit ears. That was a big deal. We'd wait for that to come up because it was cutting edge. But the thing about it was, there was stuff they wouldn't put on Saturday Night Live because they were afraid it would offend the sponsors that were sponsoring the show on the network.
Of course. Without the sponsors, there's no show.
I tell you what, I don't remember very much that wasn't on In Living Color that didn't offend somebody.
True.
But Fox, to their credit, Fox took risk because they were the new network. I mean, literally, the network was like a year or 2 old. That Sunday night lineup, they had 21 Jump Street, followed by In Living Color, with Married with Children. And Married with Children was one of the raciest shows on TV.
Yes, sir.
To not use 4-letter words.
Yes.
And people just flocked to that thing, man. And Tracy Ullman Show, that was another good one too. Mm-hmm. It was the perfect storm for In Living Color to get that opportunity on that network at that time. But going back to what you were saying was, do I think Hollywood Shuffle helped or hurt Robert Townsend? I think it helped him because he had nowhere to go. But up, he was already down.
True.
He wasn't getting shots anyway.
True. He always got tough breaks. I noticed, like with this movie, like you say, he had a hard release window. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Temptations. We love the Temptations. Well, I don't know if you love it. I love Temptations.
I know what you're talking about. What was that other movie too? The 5 Heartbeats or something like that.
Wait, maybe he directed Five Heartbeats then. I thought.
I know he directed that one,
Okay, maybe.
but he might have done Temptations too. I don't
Okay,
know.
I may mix. It's the Five Heartbeats,
Yeah.
guys. I apologize. If he did Temptation, that's great, but it was definitely the Five Heartbeats. I apologize. It was the Five Heartbeats. I'm so sorry. He got screwed over the Five Heartbeats because two other movies that were released, so he could never he made his budget back, but he never could make that great amount of money that he wanted to make.
That's what's happened with a lot of movies that are cult classics now.
Yeah.
When they came out the wrong weekend, man, and they were just buried.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot like Caddyshack.
Yeah.
Caddyshack wasn't it came out it was a good movie, and but it's way more popular now than it was when it first came out.
I think the only twist of that is I cannot remember. It was just in my head. The movie is Big Daddy. If you don't know, it's an Adam Sandler movie. It was It was not supposed to be successful. This movie was not meant to be successful. Long story short, they had to postpone the date on whatever big movie was supposed to be out. It was some blockbuster movie. They had to postpone it to a month later, but it was supposed to come out with Big Daddy. And I think even Adam Sandler said if that movie had came out, Big Daddy would not have been big.
And what saved a lot of movies too was video.
Yes.
A lot of movies came out and they were way successful on video.
Yes.
And it's because of when they came out on video, they weren't competing against Gladiator or something like that. But yeah, I mean, the only thing about Robert Townsend was he was the first, and there was a saying in the Marine Corps about the first man through the wall always gets bloody, right? And he was the first.
That's a saying.
So he paid the price.
That's a hard saying.
Well, it's true though.
That's true. Right?
Because he took the hits. Because I got news for you. All the studios weren't happy about the message he was sending, and he paid the price. But then all those other guys. That's why I said you got all these other guys that went on to have all this success with their sketch shows and stuff on TV because they were allowed to do it. He took the hit.
He definitely deserves his flowers. Yeah.
He took the hit. You see that in all kind of different things in culture, like medicine, politics. Whoever the first person was took the hit. Civil rights.
Yeah, 100%.
Civil rights leaders, like the first guys you may have never heard of. You heard of Martin Luther King. He wasn't the first. True. There was guys before him.
True, yeah. We don't know who said it. Rosa Parks was the first person to sell that.
Exactly right. But you don't know who they are.
No.
But the first people through the wall, the first guy through the wall always gets bloody.
Sure.
Everyone else comes behind him. So maybe that was probably part of the deal too, was they're like, yeah, you got yours. But, there was probably a lot of blacklisting.
Yeah. Well, he's still alive.
No, he's highly respected. He's highly respected.
As he deserves to be.
Yeah, exactly. And he was respected then because the people within the industry knew who he was and knew what he could do. But once again, it's like being on a sports team, All the guys on the team that play with you know how good you are. The people on the other teams may not. Owners and fans, they just think they do. But the people who are around you all the time really know. And you'd have to ask him, how he feels about it.
So, what I meant to ask you, always said this was the first, but would you agree that Richard Pryor's show was the first?
No, because he didn't get to do what he wanted to do.
True. Yeah.
They freaking censored almost everything he wanted to do.
That's true. That's very true.
And they cut it short. He only went
6 episodes.
6 episodes.
Yes, sir.
Believe me, if it had been able to stay, if they had let him do it, but they couldn't because he was on primetime network TV.
Mm-hmm.
What he wanted to do was going to be, it's like I don't know if you've ever saw it, but the opening he wanted to do where he had the naked suit on. He wasn't really naked, but it made him look naked. And the opening of the show was, he was basically saying, I can't remember how he worded it. It was like, I gave him everything or something like, and he was supposed to be naked. He wasn't, it looked like he made him look naked. He just couldn't see his pubic region or anything like that, but it was a suit. And that was the last straw, man. They and I think part of it too was, he didn't like the structure. He didn't like the structure of having to show up. Not to mention he was strung out on cocaine the whole time. It wasn't just him. It was the whole crew or whatever would. But he didn't like. He was a superstar. He didn't like the structure of being told, you got to be here every day." It's hard work making a television series.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and the hours, and it was cutting into his free time and stuff like that. And I think I remember reading that he was actually trying to get fired from the show because he was, for him, it was diminishing returns.
Yeah.
I mean, he was making money anyway.
Exactly.
And it was cutting into his time. But as far as, if you take the show away, just say in general, for mainstream or whatever like that, you see all these guys now, it's like, oh, if you ask a lot of the guys we know, especially younger guys, yeah, who's your favorite comics and stuff like that? I've heard all these people, like, that too. I say the younger ones. When I say younger, I'm saying like under 30 and stuff like that.
Okay.
I've never heard one of them say Richard Pryor. Never. Dave Chappelle.
I've said Richard Pryor.
I've never heard it. The ones I've heard, though, I've never heard one of them say Richard Pryor.
Okay.
And because they don't know the history. It's like if you like sports, you should know the history of what you're doing, what you're passionate about, because you can learn from the history.
Oh yeah, you can learn from the people that messed
even
up.
Even if you learn what not to do.
Oh yeah.
But going back to that, he was the one who broke the glass.
Exactly.
But you know what? He got bloody too.
Very much.
Richard Pryor, early on, go look at Richard Pryor on the Ed Sullivan Show or some of the stuff where he's got the tie and the short haircut. You remember the old videos of George Carlin with the tie?
Yeah.
And he looked like...
I've seen it.
He looked like the black version of George Carlin, doing the exact same, trying to play the game for the studios and the man running everything. But once he broke loose from that, that's when he started becoming Richard Pryor that everyone knows.
Yeah, because when I saw it, it's on YouTube. Guys, if you want to see it, I just saw it and I was just like, this isn't funny.
Exactly.
I was just like, who?
George Carlin was the same. But then in the late 60s, he started doing the counterculture stuff. And he took off, man. He all of a sudden, he went from, you see him with the short hair, clean shaven, the tie, the jacket, stuff like that. A year later, he's got hair down to here. He's wearing like the beads. He's got the whole thing on.
Like he just left
And he's
Woodstock.
doing the 7 words you can't say on TV.
Yeah.
That was his routine. He couldn't even be on the Ed Sullivan Show anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know?
He definitely went from being goofy to being very deep.
And he always was, but he couldn't do it within the confines of the medium that he was doing. It was the same with Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
He grew up in that era where everybody, all they wanted to do was get their own Dick Van Dyke show or TV comedy, like that sitcom, and you made it.
Yes.
That's the way those guys from the 80s did. The same guys that came up in the 80s, that was a big thing. Get your sitcom and you're loaded.
Yes.
But he lost a lot of good comedians. I don't mean literally.
Of course.
Yeah. But I mean, you lost a lot of good stand-ups to comedy because they did.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
He made all those movies and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. Oh, Eddie came back last year. No, I got news for you. He's nowhere near as good as what he used to be because he stopped doing it. I'm sure he would probably tell you the same thing. It's like,
I think he did talk about that. He would have to like work rooms. He would have to keep
working
rooms.
You can't not do it for 30 years and then just. I'm not saying he can't be good or whatever. I'm just saying it's a whole thing. It's a whole mindset of what you do every day. You're thinking about, the one thing that made him so good as a stand-up and when he was on Saturday Night Live is he was hungry.
Yeah.
He was
19,
hungry.
yeah.
He was hungry. He might have still been living with his parents in New Jersey for half the time. He was hungry. But once he became almost a billionaire, he wasn't hungry anymore.
Yeah.
He wasn't hungry anymore.
Yeah. It's crazy because, and we'll get back to the movie review. I apologize, guys. We took a good detour.
I told you everyone.
We took a good detour. But it never clicked to me how rich Eddie Murphy was until he came on the Ellen DeGeneres show. This is before we knew what Ellen was doing. And he said with a straight face, he has 10 kids.
Yeah.
And when he said
I think he's got one on the way.
When he said he had 10 kids, my girlfriend has one kid, little 3-year-old, love him to. But I can't imagine 9 more of them and me trying I have to work every day.
Well, he
and
doesn't
not
have
eat.
To. He doesn't have to. That's the thing. But I think he actually wanted to be like have the family life, and that took him away from, because if you notice, he hadn't made a lot of movies either lately.
Yeah, to quote Eddie Murphy, he said, what he said on SNL, he said 30 years ago, if you would say that I would be a family man and Bill Cosby would be in prison,
Yeah.
I wouldn't take that bet.
Yeah, because Bill Cosby said some things to him too. But like, I mean, there's a lot of, Arsenio Hall. Where's he?
He just did a special 3 years ago. It's pretty good. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, but I mean, how long was he not doing anything? He had the #1 talk show, well, probably next to Johnny Carson in the early '90s.
But I mean, you do comedy, I do comedy. Isn't the goal to have disappear money?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
Was all those guys, that was their goal, to get a talk show or a TV sitcom. They thought that was the ultimate. Once you got there, you made it. But I guarantee you right now, if you name the people that you are your favorite stand-up comics, probably none of them ended up that route.
True.
The ones I can think of didn't.
True.
Well, that's not true. They're still doing both.
Okay.
Like Ricky Gervais, Louis C.K. Well, Louis not. Louis not doing it, but he's not doing it because he doesn't want to do it. He's doing it because he can't do it right now.
All right, next.
But he was doing both, and he was doing both of them really well. Okay. And Ricky Gervais was doing both really well. You can't do them now because of COVID or whatever that. But there's other guys think of the top. Dave Chappelle was doing it. He didn't want to do it anymore. He didn't want to do it. He said, be careful what you ask for because you might get it. He got it.
Yeah.
And then what did he say when he got it? He didn't like it.
Yeah. And all that, like you said, all that trails back to this movie, Hollywood Shuffle. And literally just watching it and just watching, like, this was just true, like, influence. Like, this influenced so many different shows, so many different sketches. Like, I saw a few sketches that reminded me of Dave Chappelle sketches. I saw a few sketches that remind me of Key and Peele sketches.
I forgot about them. Yeah.
It just really shows that, like, the pure influence this movie had stretches on, and hopefully will stretch on for years and years. And thank you so much for introducing me to the movie. I would say that this movie has definitely influenced pop culture. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, they need to re-release that for the younger kids to watch now, man.
Yeah. Just
almost as like a history movie so they can go back and see. It should be mandatory to watch if you want to do comedy, so you can see.
Yeah, structure.
Yeah. Well, not just so you can see how we got to where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if definitely, I think if anybody that's like starting filmmaking or wants to get into it, I think this is definitely a movie they should watch for at least motivation.
Oh yeah.
To show that, like, well, $1 million is I don't know, is that a great budget?
Well, now it would be still, even now though, with inflation or whatever, it's still not going to be. The movies they're making now are $100 million movies.
That's
and stuff.
Very true. I mean, I'm recording on my phone, so I don't know why I said $1 million. But anyway, it's a great motivational to see if you're a filmmaker, and also just a great movie to watch. 1 through 10, what would you give this movie?
Oh, that's a 10 for me. Yeah.
It's a 10 for me also, guys. Thank you so much for introducing me to the movie. Is there anything you'd like to say to your fans?
No, man. I just, as far as comedy movies, man, I say I'd probably if I had 5 top comedy movies, this is one of them in no specific order.
Nice.
But definitely it's a must see movie if you really into the history of especially sketch comedy like that.
Would you be interested in the future to come back and like review one of the other movies you like?
Oh yeah.
Cool. Sure. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching the movie review, and have an amazing day.